Good morning, cellists. Here we are in week 9 of our lockdown, and this week we're going to be looking at a piece that's very dear to the heart of all cellists and listeners alike. There is a French connection, and it won't surprise you to know that it's going to be Saint-Saens Le Cygne, the Swan. Saint-Saens and Feuillard actually had a lifelong friendship spanning 60 years. And this was formed when Feuillard went to Paris to the École Niedemeyer, and he was a student of Saint-Saens, who was only 10 years his senior, but nevertheless there was the mentor relationship that began, and they exchanged ideas over the decades. The Swan was written about 10 years after Après un rêve that we studied last week. And its initial concept was for solo cello with 2 pianos accompanying. And as we all know, its greatest reputation, if you like, is as part of the Carnival of the Animals, the 13th movement of that. And we know that it's very commonly extracted from there, but it's quite good to know that actually it was originally conceived as a piece in its own right. So without further ado, let us consider our technical things that we should be looking at this week. We're going to choose Feuillard's 13th study because this will help us with very clean shifts from 4th to 1st and a sense of calm tranquility in the bow whilst the left hand is acting quite quickly. But we give the illusion of calm, rather like your swan gliding along the water. So it'll be a good compliment to the Swan, of course. For a technical warm-up, I think we just take G major. And I was thinking it's always a good idea to do things slightly differently. So I've got 2 ideas for slightly differently. One is, rather than beginning on the open G, why not choose the universal fingering for major keys? So we'll be beginning in 4th position with a stretch, then come back to stretch towards it, a C natural, and a stretch again, back a displaced semitone. Then at this point we're back in 1st position, which is where you're familiar with in the scale, and there we have it. And on the way down, reach out for the A, reach out for the E, reach out for the B. And at this last portion, you really do need rotation of the arm to help you really reach out comfortably for that little finger on the B natural. So there's a fingering difference, which you can use universally, so you could easily just slip it back and you could be playing F sharp major really easily because you know the fingering. We'll be trying that later this week. The other thing that you could do is start from the top. We always seem to start from the bottom, don't we? So sort of like learn that way. But it's a really great idea just to change things a little and start from the top. And maybe also you could start from an up bow instead of a down. So we could do this. Turn everything upside down and get comfortable with it. One other idea in terms of comfort, if you like, and getting ready for feeling comfortable in 3-time in the very gliding, well actually it's 6/4 for the Saint-Saens, but thinking of 3 notes for a bow, you could start on a 3-octave scale of G and maybe do in 3s. I was just choosing standard fingering on the way down because I actually wanted to encounter the open A, which we will be using in the solution for the Swan, and it's important that we can keep practicing keeping open strings sounding right in the progression of stopped notes. So there you are, 2 thoughts on G major, a different fingering, number of notes per bow, and starting from the top instead of the bottom. One more mix in that could be if you take the new universal fingering, to bow in 4. Again, trying to feel really calm and peaceful with that within the stretches. The idea of taking the 4 is that the groups are in 3s, and so we'd be sure to overlay smoothly from one to the other. Okay, so Feuillard study number 13, as I mentioned earlier, is full of repose and clean shifts. So in the very first bar, we're moving from 1st to 4th throughout the study, and we need to do this a very sort of, I'd take a very steady, calm pace, like this. Within that small fragment there, the idea is that the sound, if you shut your eyes, should sound really, really calm and reposed. But be careful that you don't become then a bit sloppy about the movement here, because if you were sluggish with the movement here, you'll get a glissando, which we don't really want. I'll show you what I mean. So if I took the kind of calm, relaxed tempo idea in all parts of the movement, don't want that. So between the very calm, steady notes, we want a quick move here. Keep that arm slightly raised so that you really can move up and down the fingerboard very quickly and easily. If you find it's really difficult and you can't seem to kind of detach those two things, you know, calm and steady and slow with the bow, but a fast movement between notes, you can practice a cunning little trick where you just play semiquavers for each of those beats, like this. And that now forces your left hand to have to move within a semitone of time there. So it will move quicker, even though actually you're staying on the note the same length of time as in the other solution, like this. Now at that point we've had an inarticulate shift. And remember that when we're going back into a lower position, we're going against gravity. Get that elbow raised and help your arm drag backwards. So the second half of that phrase is a little more unnerving, a little more unsettling, because with the chromatic rises and falls and these diminished fifths that are going on there. So it's a little less comfortable orally speaking, but you make sure that you still keep really good clean shifts and believe in the line. That's as much as we're doing on that study this morning. And now we're going to look at the very beginning of the Swan. And this, of course, has got the same shift from 4th to 1st position, and hence you can see why we chose that study. Quite commonly, the cellist, particularly in performance, may be a bit worried about being sure to come back to the right note on the B, and quite often that's sharp. And this will be because of what I mentioned in the Feuillard, that you need to be sure that you lead with the elbow so that you travel back quickly enough in the actual move between the notes. However slow the pulse is, your speed between them needs to be quite quick and clean. And another little tip for you is, before you begin, just check where that B is, and therefore you've resettled in your brain and finger connection where it is to come back to. And therefore you'll increase your confidence about it, and your hit rate should be greatly increased, hopefully to 99.something%. You'll notice also in there, we're thinking about the bow speed. It's not really a third for each note, because when you very first begin, it's as if you're getting your toes into the water. We need to be sure that that feels really relaxed and that you can start floating away happily upon that water. Maybe you could imagine one of those little children's sailing boats, and you just need to pop it in the water and blow it along. So this feeling of being very relaxed in the arm, allowing some arm weight to come in there. Your breath will be very important. So you can relax. And that it's much more important that you feel the glide on the very first note. So you can be a little bit more generous with that note, not necessarily a third of the bow, maybe towards half of a bow, to help you really begin in the manner in which you have in your mind, so that it comes out correctly. If you worry then that you haven't got enough bow for the third note, tip onto the flat of the hair and it will last plenty long enough. Of course, it's nice and easy to come back when you've used a full-length bow. Now in that second half of the bar, you may have noticed an interesting fingering. It's quite commonly solved this way. So I've moved from 3 on the E, I'm on the first finger, the D, but in order to make a really lovely legato transition across the string on a perfect fifth, I've chosen to crisscross my fingers over. So they literally are sitting on top of each other, a little bit like crossing your fingers for good luck. And the reasons. This way you still get a really good clear point to the sound because you're using fingertip action. But we can be as smooth as you like across the string with a flat bow hair, with both notes pressed and ready. The other solutions that you might think, why don't we use a different, easier method? Well, if you jump 1 to 1, there is going to be a tiny little gap in the sound there. You've lost the vibration of the one string as you go to the other, no matter how quick you are. That's not going to be as smooth as the method I've shown you. Another question you may have is, why not bar it like this? And of course, in accompanimental figures like this would be fine if it was a kind of something that was more of an interior part of the fabric of the music. But this is a melodic line. And so we don't, that gives us imprecision or less focused sound, even if you try and vibrate. The main reason is, of course, we're using a different part of the finger then to depress the A string onto the fingerboard, and it's just not such a good contact as the fingertip, and that's why we're going to do this crisscross over 1 to 2, where 2 sits right on the fingernail of the first finger. After that, it's fairly plain sailing for the swan. Into 4th. We come back to first position, which is all your study is going to help you with this, and you've got a crotchet's rest as well. The movement up here, I'll show you 2 bow solutions. The first one, which is fairly commonly solved this way, is like this: a minim on one bow, pair of notes on the next, then 3 and 3, and solve your finger solution to match your bow. Raise the arm, ready to slide, and as you go along the bow for that top note, you go slightly towards the flat of the bow hair. Now that's one method, and it works perfectly nicely. But maybe we could save that for later, that we could use that solution at bar 20. And that for this very first rendition, we try and keep the lid on the dynamic and the emotion. It would be very, very tempting, especially as it's so well known, orally speaking, to want to play, you really want to kind of go for it already, but hey, let's just save that for a bit later. And instead we could provide ourselves with the method to keep the lid on it, and that is to do a different bow solution, so that we might use only 2 bows in that bar rather than 4, but don't divide them too obviously. Let's go for a 1 bow stroke to the open A, bow stroke for the other 5 notes. And that way you really do have an absolute smooth glide. You know, you've actually, by dovetailing into the second half of the bar and catching that open A string at the point, it feels a lot more sublime, like you really are very at one with the water here. And we're keeping it ever so calm and still. Save that emotional energy and the dynamic rises for later. Then it'll be lots more effective, far more exciting if you keep that back. Last little note about what we've just looked at there, of course, is the final shift from 4 to 3. Remember, we keep contact with the fingerboard the whole time when we do these shifts. You can move your hand backwards and forwards like this without a bow to kind of get that feeling from 4 to 3. So that in this situation, your third finger is already making contact with the string and the fingerboard, and the whole hand slides, and the fourth finger is knocked out of the way by the third. And that by getting that feeling, you'll know what the distance feels like for your ear's expectations. Don't be afraid of it. If you start finding you're holding your arm back here, it means you're not feeling completely super confident about it, and you really will have difficulty finding that note. So keep your arm slightly raised so that you're in a very easy position. You can see that there's minimal arm movement there, more of a hand change of shape in order to reach the top note. So altogether, I know it's only 5 bars, and one of those is a bar's rest, which you have plenty of time to get very composed before the swan enters the water. That's super, great start, and tomorrow we shall explore some more swan.